Foreign Sun, a fascinating, fast-paced Souls-like where the player can reshape the lives of many for better or worse. Created by Final Scene Dev, we have a game that's influenced by Hyper Light Drifter, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. I knew about Foreign Sun for a long time, and even played its previous iteration, Biomass, some time ago. An odd yet fun experience that game was, but now it's time to make that journey to the Meridian Gate, the Foreign Sun. Walk with me. I want to show you a fraction of what that journey looked like. Early game, after you defeat the first boss, you have to get on top of the floating village, where the objective is to meet with the Red Mother past the guards. My current weapons are a beam saber and a halberd, which are the ones that you start with. And with these, you can try to fight them, but at this point it might be too early and I'd get cooked for it. The enemy on the opposite side is more manageable, as he's just a normal enemy that's armored. The main way to deal with him is to break his poise, or you will do no damage. To do that, you'll have to clash with his attacks to break his poise. The riposte will break his armor, and you could treat him like any other. Normal enemies with the beam saber and the scythe are easy to manage, especially the latter because they flash red when they attack. The guys with a double-sided beam saber can easily be dealt with as well if you do a heavy attack to clash. I waited out because I was mostly just having a skill issue. Getting across the rope, I come across enemies that are on the high ground. I had a bad feeling that they would jump me, so I made sure to only get one at a time. Going a bit ahead, there's a 1v2 that can't be avoided. Well, kind of. The man with a halberd keeps attacking, so eventually you will have to block to avoid your poise getting broken. Non-beam weapons can't be clashed with, and they must be dodged. Admittedly, the encounter would have been more challenging if they both came together, but the other dude kept pacing back and forth. Up the ladder, there are 4 enemies total, 2 of which have a gun. Initially, I did have trouble with this, and I felt like there were too much to handle. Bullets can be deflected back if you attack properly. On the second attempt, I was able to take him out quickly. Climbing higher, you will see another enemy. This one is optional. I choose to fight him because I wanted to. If you don't feel like fighting, you can just jump the gap. Whether or not this will be changed later, I'm not sure. Proceeding forward, we have the last 2 enemies of this section. If you are fast enough, you shouldn't take damage from the bullets, and you can handle the one with the halberd with care. Thinking back on this specific encounter, I can't help but wonder if it would have been more interesting if the guy with the halberd was actually in front, as he would be attacking me while the other guy is getting ready to fire his gun. But I also know that these characters walk around, so it's very possible I just caught them at a bad moment. Down the ledge is where you can get the same exact outfit that the enemies wear, but you get it from a sketchy individual. This will allow you to walk past the enemies that align with the Red Mother specifically. That being said, everyone is fooled except the Red Mother herself, because through the lore implications, she has to approve that person herself, and she's never seen you. That said, while she doesn't know how you got the outfit, she's willing to let you walk away and turn a blind eye. Sadly, someone I made friends with beforehand wants her head, so I try to fight her. It doesn't go well at all. When I tried going on my 4th attempt, the place gets invaded by another faction. Because at the moment you don't get an infinite amount of attempts, I will have to show another fight. So instead, I will talk about the boss you fight before you get to this point, the South Tower Guardian. This boss will likely be what players find first, and he's a good skill check for beginners. The Guardian shoots energy projectiles, missiles, charges at the player, and strikes you with his energy weapon. The energy-based attacks can all be clashed with, and the energy projectiles can be deflected back at it, destroying its poise. For this boss, along with the rest of the game, the player has to make sure to clash with the energy attacks, or you'll be in here for a long time. You are allowed to attack the boss and you'll do some damage, but it's not a lot. That being said, the player has to manage their overheat and stamina meters. The former is needed to clash, while the other one is needed to block. You don't want to run out of resources because when you do, you'll probably die. The charge and missiles need to be dodged as they are physical or kinetic attacks. Halfway through the fight, the South Tower Guardian will combine the dash attack, energy strike, and missiles. While the sequence is longer, that's the only mix-up. The boss is slow enough for the player to see and react to the change. Plus, there's not much to remember in the sequence. If the player still has trouble, you can ask for help if you aligned with this wonderful gentleman over here. But I personally didn't because I wanted to get better at the game. The South Tower Guardian is a basic boss compared to the rest, but he's a great gatekeeper for the rest of the game, as it forces the player to get good at the mechanics of Foreign Sun. How does Foreign Sun control? The player character, the Pilgrim, can run, jump, and grab on ledges. From the ledge grab, you can hold the opposite direction and jump, otherwise you'll go straight up. If you hold the opposite direction long enough, you will glow. This will indicate that when you press the jump button, you'll go farther. Throughout the game, you'll pick up power-ups and tools that can be used to traverse the settlements. Of course, while traveling, you'll come across opposition. This is where you might have to fight. With combat, the Pilgrim has access to 3 different kinds of weapons: primary, secondary, and items. Primary weapons are swift and do not use stamina. This is the main way to deal damage. The beam saber and fists will be the main ones you'll have access to early on. The secondary weapons have much slower attacks, but they are generally stronger than the primary weapons. Using secondary weapons will additionally cost stamina. The halberd, battering ram, and axe are ones you can get access to early. And lastly, we have the items. These are limited and need to be found or synthesized. Grenades and the flintlock are examples of offensive items. The player can only have 3 equipped at once. The crux of the combat is clashing with enemy attacks. The player can break enemies' poise if they clash with them enough. Primary attacks are generally used to clash. However, if you're aware of the pattern, you can use a secondary heavy attack to break the poise faster. Clashing will accumulate heat. If the heat meter is about to fill, an audio cue will play. The audio cue is a warning to hold off on the clashing. Continuing to do so will break your poise. Blocking moves you can clash with and attacking are required to lower that meter. When the enemy uses a heavy attack, they'll have a red outline. These attacks must be dodged. Dodging is also used to avoid non-laser attacks. Dodging doesn't cost stamina, so in my playthrough you'll see me spam it to move slightly faster. Anyway, if you try to clash with a heavy attack, you will lose all your stamina and get staggered. If you somehow live after being staggered, you can get your stamina back by doing light attacks or waiting it out. Projectiles can be deflected too by your attacks, and the player can choose to block the projectiles, but they won't be sent back to the enemy. Clashes can only be done with laser-based attacks. Weapons like the fist, battering ram, and other kinetic weapons will not work, and you can't deflect bullets with your fist either. When you get hurt, the other important mechanic to keep in mind is the streak meter, as that is the main way to heal. Filling the streak meter requires the player to land clean hits or clash. It goes down when you get hit. If your HP is low and you don't have access to a full streak meter, you can use a catalyst. Those will only refill at the workbench. Character progression revolves around mods that you can equip. There are basic mods that will increase base stats like health and stamina. There are mods that give varying passives as well. Some even have a downside attached to them. Depending on the mod you equip, some will require 1 or 2 slots. The mechanics of Foreign Sun are pretty in-depth and run deep. Going over everything would bore you as well as myself. I would rather just play the game at that point because I thoroughly enjoyed it. The combat in Foreign Sun felt satisfying to interact with. I was curious and I had to ask where the inspiration for the combat came from, even if I had a good feeling where it did come from. After the GameCube PS2 era, I was really over gaming, but playing Bloodborne reinvigorated my love for the medium, especially in biomass. A lot of the gameplay was modeled on that. I never finished it, but Undertale was definitely an influence. I was so impressed with all the innovative things that it did, and it truly pushed the medium. It definitely inspired me to try to come up with as many clever things I can think of to make my game truly unique. For Foreign Sun specifically, I liked how the distorted man battle came out, having to clash swords and breaking stance as such. I tried bringing things from Sekiro and adapt them to the biomass world, specifically focusing on one combat style. As mentioned earlier, biomass is Foreign Sun's predecessor. Anyway, I expected Bloodborne and Sekiro, but not Undertale. The inclusion of Undertale actually makes sense when looking at how the story progression works. However, I won't get into that right now. Clashing swords operates in the same way as deflecting in Sekiro. You have to learn the attack patterns to deflect in Sekiro in order to stance break enemies. The concept is the same thing in Foreign Sun. There are the additions of using a second weapon to clash, perfect clashing, and using mods to build around that specific playstyle. This system is great game design. The player can even build their character around not interacting with the clash system if they wanted to. I personally didn't, as I enjoyed how the system works. Shout out to the South Guardian robot. That boss was my first. And yeah, I had a rough time understanding how to clash with its attacks, but once I had a good grasp of how everything worked, I was able to beat him just fine. I liked that boss and most of the bosses after it. That being said, I can say most of the enemies in Foreign Sun are designed well, have variety, and are fun to fight. All enemies come with their own quirks that the player needs to handle properly in order to deal with them. Humanoids from the south, east, and west settlements generally use laser-based weaponry and can be clashed with. They will mix in heavy attacks to overpower you. People from the south settlement will use standard beam sabers, but they have axes, halberds, double-sided beam sabers, and battering rams. And mind you, battering rams can't be clashed with, so you have to dodge. The average combatant from the east settlement uses beam daggers, which are faster with a longer attack string. Those people also like to throw exploding knives. Meanwhile, we go to the west, and they have high-tech equipment. They have more guns and rocket launchers on top of the beam sabers. They also have weapons that you can't exactly clash with. Last but not least, we have the pilots, and they focus on attacks that you have to dodge. While they can't use beam swords, some might have blades for arms. Besides the beam saber, all factions have one thing in common, and that's wanting the pilgrim dead. All of those factions will have elite type of enemies that will mix attacks that you can and can't clash with. If you include bosses, there are enemies in the game who overwhelm you with attacks that you can clash with, but will overheat you if you don't have the proper mod. So at some point, you might have to block. Finding an opening to get an attack in can also work. Take it from me, Foreign Sun's combat is satisfying to experience. I did have one issue, and that had to deal with some of the clash hitboxes. The pilot boss archetype, not including the prisoner of war, along with the director boss, have this issue. I discovered this while fighting the marionettes. Moves that are difficult to predict are fine, but at times I had to put myself in the line of fire to interact with it. If I didn't, then the boss would just keep punching in a direction where I wasn't, and that's kinda awkward. I feel like the boss should try to track me before trying to punch, similar to how its slam works. While I am showing the non-boss version, there's a crab boss that is the same archetype as the puppet. It has a claw attack that has a really late perfect clash window. So I couldn't get a good read on its attacks. It was kinda just guessing and hoping. The director has a clash window that's so early in his attack animation, it was screwing up my timing. A solution to this would be to make the clash hitboxes consistent. And yeah, I get it, Captain Obvious makes an appearance, but what else is there to say? Just make sure I can't clash with a man that doesn't have his sword out yet. Besides that, that's pretty much all I have to say about the combat. Now let's get to the writing, because it is intertwined with the gameplay big time, and it was a quality I enjoyed. Foreign Son is a plot-driven narrative that relies on the action and inaction of the player. All you really get at the start of the game is the pilgrim waking up on the shore. After that, you go through the tutorial if it's your first playthrough, and then you get to the boat. Once you jump on it, he will tell you that all your actions will be evaluated. From there, you get to experience Foreign Son and its events, which may or may not include talking with the friendly locals, fighting whoever seems like a threat or just because it's fun, and finding cool secret areas. But remember, whatever you choose to do, keep whatever you saw in mind. From what I could tell in the first playthrough is that it gives you hints on what's possible for the game's endings. What I said in the intro was not fluff, as all your choices can shape the lives of many for better or worse. This would include the event that I showed in the gameplay section where I released the prisoner and then there was an invasion shortly after. With that in mind, the way the game is formatted can be a barrier for new players. I don't want players to feel as though they did something wrong, try to solve a problem that isn't there, and then quit because, you can't solve a problem that isn't there. I'll admit that I was irritated throughout my first playthrough because I wanted to fight bosses more and I wanted to stop specific events from happening, but I couldn't. So the best advice I can give is just go with the flow. After getting over this hurdle, I was able to enjoy the event that I experience. Like, I can admit I'm not a fan of stories that deal with time, but the rules on it here are strict and don't go into complete nonsense. And it's because of that I had to ask, why was the game written this way? And here's what he had to tell me. I have a very limited ability to suspend disbelief. I don't really enjoy watching many TV shows or playing narrative-based games, as I always find the way the behavior and dialogue to be really unrealistic. I just get in the mindset that this is a work of fiction written by a person and I struggle to enjoy the world after that. So for my games, I really try to design a world as opposed to a narrative. I don't want to create a world around a player. The player has to adapt to the world. That's an interesting opinion on the media as a whole. I can't say I'm on board with that opinion myself wholesale, but I understand it partially. And that mostly has to deal with stories that revolve around a character being the only one that can save the world. Stories like that can get tiring. He wanted the player to engross themselves in the world of Foreign Son. That plays into what I said about learning everything you can in your first playthrough. The journey is short enough where you might remember key details on the New Game Plus run, so you can do something else. For what the dev is going for, I believe it worked. Bold to make the player experience events with terrible outcomes. But I mean, hey, it also gives them hints to the bigger picture. Or in my case, dude, just let me get that run back. I'm just trying to fight. But hey, I definitely had a good time for how the story was written. Lastly, we have the presentation, and I'd say it's great. As you can see, Foreign Son goes for a minimal pixel art style that takes inspiration for how Hyper Light Drifter looks. The exact setting, post-apocalyptic sci-fi, came from the want to create a world with isolated communities, at least while he was making Biomass. The skeleton of what that world was used for Foreign Son, but this time he wanted to focus on the people. To quote him directly, "I wanted to focus on the different mindsets that the people in these settlements would adopt to try to survive and find meaning in this world." I'm glad the developer kept the setting and expanded upon the communities within the world because they all have their distinct look and it's great. The South is barely getting by and low on resources, and you can see that in what they wear, as they wear rags and tattered clothes. The East are hidden from the sun and they stay in secluded areas, so their assassin attire is fitting. Then we get to the West, which are authoritarian in nature, and it looks like they're living well in that cyberpunk city, but everything's so strict and they hide stuff from the people. I love the designs, the people, and monsters too. And the music definitely helps with the setting as well. I definitely enjoyed the boss tracks, but I can't exactly pick one. The one issue I have with the presentation is how the dark areas look. Personally, I think they're too dark for their own good and can affect the gameplay negatively. A good solution is to adjust the lighting so players can see better. If you go for a more natural lighting, you can make more objects glow just like you have in the other areas. Examples would be from the tentacles. You can also add more light fixtures that are flickering. Whether it's natural lighting or just bumping up the brightness slider, anything would be fine. Overall, Forn Sun is an underrated gem that I need people to play. The game isn't perfect as some areas can be too dark, the hitboxes can be janky, but most notably, how the game handles progression can be a barrier for people. Barring that last one, everything else can be fixed. And honestly, some people may not even see the story structure being the way that it is to be a downside or a barrier. I personally just wanted to be considerate and warn people before they play. Anyway, I would like to thank Final Scene Dev for answering my questions and talking about Forn Sun in general. It was a good time. If you are interested in playing Forn Sun, you can get it on Steam for $19.99. And if somehow you played this game already, I can only recommend other side-scrolling Souls-likes, such as Vigil the Longest Night and The Tarnishing of Juxtia. Both are underrated in their own right and need to be played. But that's it from me. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.